Mary Williams never imagined that the worst day of her career as a housekeeper would begin with an 8-year-old girl crying behind the living room curtains. Victoria Harrison, daughter of Manhattan's richest real estate mogul, was trembling with fear, while her father's new fiancée, Jessica Morgan, threatened her with words as sharp as blades. The elegant woman in the red dress whispered "poison," promising that no one would ever believe the words of a spoiled child. But Mary had heard everything, and when Jessica noticed her presence, the look she threw was loaded with a sinister promise. In that moment, Mary realized she had to choose: her well-paid job or the safety of a defenseless child. What happened in the following minutes would unleash a battle that would reveal the true face of seemingly perfect people, and forever change the lives of everyone in Manhattan's most luxurious penthouse. The Harrison penthouse on the Upper East Side was a 4-story mansion that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Carrara marble, original artwork, antique furniture, and cutting-edge technology blended in harmony that took your breath away. For Mary Williams, 52 years old, widowed and mother of 2 grown children, this job as head housekeeper had been a miracle after years of financial difficulties. Robert Harrison had built his real estate empire from nothing. At 52, tall and distinguished with graying hair, he had always been a reserved man dedicated to work. He had lost his wife Sarah 3 years earlier in a car accident, remaining alone with little Victoria, then 5 years old. Mary had started working for the family 6 months after the tragedy. She had seen Robert struggle with grief, trying to be both father and mother. Victoria was his treasure, blonde hair like her mother, intelligent blue eyes, sweet but determined character. Mary had learned to love her like a granddaughter. Everything had changed 3 months earlier when Robert met Jessica Morgan at a charity dinner. Jessica was a 40-year-old woman with magnetic charm, tall, brunette, elegant, with a gaze that knew how to be sweet when needed. She ran an art gallery in Soho and moved in Manhattan's most exclusive circles. The courtship had been quick and intense. Jessica knew exactly what she wanted and how to get it. With Robert, she showed herself understanding, charming, interested in his business. With Victoria, she played the role of caring future mother, bringing expensive gifts and promising special trips. But Mary had started noticing disturbing details. When Robert wasn't there, Jessica changed completely. Her smile became cold, her words cutting. She spoke to Victoria in a tone that chilled the blood, gave sharp orders, ignored her when the child sought attention. Mary had tried to speak discreetly with Robert, but he was too in love to see. Jessica had done a perfect job conquering him. When Mary hinted at her concerns, Robert dismissed her, saying Jessica was wonderful with Victoria. The situation had precipitated that October morning. Robert had left for Chicago for an important deal that would keep him away for 2 days. Jessica, who now practically lived in the penthouse, had seen the opportunity to finally show her true face. Mary was arranging flowers in the main living room when she heard Jessica's voice rising. She followed the sound and saw a scene that froze her blood. Victoria was hidden behind the heavy velvet curtains, trembling like a leaf, while Jessica leaned over her with an expression of pure cruelty. The woman was threatening the child, telling her that if she ever told her father what she had seen, Jessica rummaging through Robert's private documents, no one would ever believe her. She was explaining with surgical precision that she was just a spoiled child, that her father was tired of her, that soon he would send her to boarding school to get rid of her. Mary remained paralyzed for a few seconds, then cleared her throat by deliberately dropping a vase. Jessica straightened abruptly, turning toward her with a look that would have scared anyone. For a moment, the two women stared at each other in silence. Mary saw in Jessica's eyes the promise of terrible revenge if she spoke. But when she looked at Victoria, still trembling with tears streaming down her face, Mary realized she had no choice. She had to protect that child, whatever the price. She gently led Victoria to the kitchen to make the cookies she liked, while Jessica smiled with the expression of a predator who had just marked her prey. The message was clear. One wrong word, and Mary would pay the consequences. But Mary Williams had raised 2 children alone, faced poverty and abandonment, fought for everything she owned. She wouldn't let a spoiled and cruel woman intimidate her when an innocent child's safety was at stake. The 2 days of Robert's absence turned into a nightmare for Mary and Victoria. Jessica, free to act without masks, showed a cruelty that Mary had never imagined could exist in a seemingly refined person. The first attack came during lunch. Jessica had invited some of her friends, elegant women who gravitated in the same exclusive circles. Victoria was sitting at the table trying to eat properly, when Jessica began what seemed like an innocent conversation. With honeyed voice, she spoke to her friends about the poor little girl who was having trouble adapting. She invented that Victoria still wet the bed like a baby, humiliating her in front of strangers who looked at her with pity and disgust. The child blushed with shame, lowering her gaze to her plate, while tears burned her eyes. Mary, who was serving the second course, felt her blood boil, but she knew that intervening openly would only make things worse. Instead, she approached, whispering to Victoria that after lunch they would go to the garden to see the butterflies. The afternoon was even worse. While Mary was cleaning the upstairs bedrooms, Jessica took Victoria to her private study. When Mary came down, she found the child sitting in a corner, pale and silent as a ghost. Victoria didn't respond to her questions immediately. Then, in a barely audible voice, she whispered that Jessica had told her daddy didn't want her anymore, that she was a burden, that as soon as they got married, they would send her away. Mary felt her heart break. She took Victoria in her arms and carried her to her room, firmly explaining that Daddy loves you more than anything in the world, that what that lady told her wasn't true. But Victoria shook her head, saying that Jessica had proof, that Daddy had confessed she had become too difficult to handle. Mary understood that Jessica was playing a cruel psychological game, destroying an 8-year-old's self-esteem to make her docile and malleable. It was a refined but devastating form of emotional violence. That evening, Mary called Robert. When she tried to explain that they needed to talk about important things regarding Jessica, Robert became cold. He told her Jessica was a wonderful woman who would soon become his wife, and that he couldn't allow Victoria's tantrums to influence his future. When she hung up, Mary realized she was completely alone in this battle. Robert was blinded by love and wouldn't believe her words without concrete proof. The next day, Jessica summoned her to the living room. She was sitting in the velvet armchair that had been Sarah's, with a triumphant expression on her face. She explained that she had spoken with Robert about the phone call, that he was very disappointed that Mary was trying to create problems. A housekeeper who sows discord in the family cannot remain, and Robert agreed. The blackmail was clear: stay silent and keep the job, or speak and end up on the street. But there was a detail Jessica didn't know. Mary had started recording their conversations with her phone hidden in her pocket. When Mary replied that perhaps she should know that there are people who see much more than she believed, for the first time, she saw a flash of uncertainty in Jessica's eyes. The silent war had just become more interesting. Robert returned from Chicago that evening, bringing gifts for everyone. He seemed in excellent spirits. Probably the deal had gone well. During dinner, Jessica masterfully played the role of perfect fiancée, taking interest in Robert's business, complimenting him, showing affection toward Victoria. Only Mary noticed the small, cruel gestures, nails digging into the child's arm when no one was looking, the cutting glance when Victoria talked too much, the way she completely ignored her when Robert wasn't watching. After dinner, while Robert retired to his study for urgent phone calls, Jessica accompanied Victoria to get ready for bed. Mary followed them discreetly, phone already ready to record. What she heard chilled her. Jessica, with sweet voice but poisonous words, was convincing Victoria that she was a burden to her father. that her presence made Robert sad because she reminded him of his dead wife, that the only way to make him happy was to behave like a good, silent child. She whispered that Daddy was very tired of her capricious behavior, that he had told her he was thinking of sending her to Aunt Clara in Boston so he wouldn't have to worry about her anymore. Victoria began crying silently, and Jessica continued her work of psychological destruction, promising that if she behaved well, if she didn't tell lies anymore, maybe they could convince Daddy to keep her a little longer. Mary had heard enough. She entered the room with an excuse, noticing how Jessica immediately changed expression and tone, complimenting how lucky Victoria was to have such a caring housekeeper. That night, Mary couldn't sleep. She had the recordings, but she knew Robert was so in love he would find excuses for Jessica. She had to devise a more elaborate plan. The next day, Jessica announced she wanted to organize a party to celebrate their official engagement. She would invite all the important people in Manhattan, entrepreneurs, politicians, artists. It would be the perfect opportunity to show her new social position. Mary had an idea. If Jessica wanted a party, she would have one, but not in the way she expected. She began working in the shadows, calling some ladies she knew from other jobs, women who worked as housekeepers in Manhattan's most important homes. She asked them to spread word about Jessica's true behavior. What she discovered shocked her. Jessica had a terrible reputation. She had ruined several marriages, defrauded clients by selling fakes as originals, had housekeepers fired for trivial reasons. She had always been skilled at hiding her misdeeds behind charm and the right connections. On the day of the party, Mary put her plan into action. While Jessica prepared for the evening, flaunting her new designer dress, Mary strategically placed hidden cameras throughout the house. She had asked for help from her son, Marcus, who worked in electronics. The party began magnificently. Jessica was radiant, showing her engagement ring, receiving compliments. Robert seemed like the happiest man in the world. But Mary knew the real party would begin when Jessica thought she was safe from prying eyes. Around midnight, when most guests had left and Robert was busy saying goodbye to the last arrivals, Jessica took Victoria aside to the library. What she did in front of the hidden cameras exceeded all of Mary's imagination for cruelty and evil. Finally, she had the concrete evidence needed to unmask the monster who was about to become Victoria's stepmother. The week following the party was a period of apparent calm but intense preparation for Mary. She had video recordings that clearly showed Jessica threatening and humiliating Victoria, but she had to choose the right moment to reveal them. Robert was euphoric about the party's success and the approval Jessica had received. It wouldn't be easy to destroy that happiness with the truth. Jessica intensified her efforts to get Mary fired, inventing small errors and shortcomings that she reported to Robert. The house was transforming into a silent battlefield. The breaking point came on a Wednesday evening. Robert had announced he wanted to set the wedding date for the following month.
Enjoying the story? Give it a little like, and don't forget to subscribe. Now then, let's carry on.
Jessica had proposed sending Victoria to spend a few weeks with Aunt Clara in Boston, to allow the adults to organize everything without distractions. Robert had agreed without consulting Victoria, and when the child protested, saying she wanted to stay home, Jessica had silenced her, explaining that children don't decide where they should stay. Victoria had burst into tears and run to her room. Robert, instead of comforting her, had sighed, saying she was becoming increasingly difficult, just as Jessica claimed. Mary could no longer contain herself. She asked to speak with Robert privately, promising that after 5 minutes, if he wanted to fire her, she would accept the decision. In the study, Mary began showing the recordings. Robert's expression changed as he listened to Jessica threaten his daughter, humiliate her, tell her she was a burden, and that her father didn't want her anymore. When she reached the part where Jessica called Victoria a little liar who invented stories to get attention, Robert paled, murmuring that it couldn't be true. Mary showed the videos from the party night. The images were clear. Jessica shaking Victoria by the shoulders, covering her mouth when she tried to speak, whispering terrible threats to her. Robert watched the recordings with growing horror. The man who had always put his daughter first realized he had completely failed to protect her. He asked where Victoria was, and when he learned she had been crying in her room for an hour, he stormed out of the study, followed by Mary. They found Jessica in the living room casually filing her nails. When she saw Robert's expression, she realized something had gone wrong. Robert looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, asking if it was true what she had done to his daughter. Jessica laughed lightly, claiming to adore Victoria and suggesting that maybe Mary had told some nonsense. When Robert told her he had seen the videos and heard the recordings, Jessica's face changed completely. The mask of sweetness fell, revealing the cruelty she had always hidden. She asked what he thought he was doing, if he wanted to ruin his life for a spoiled and capricious child. Victoria needed discipline, and he was too weak to give it to her. Robert ordered her to leave his house immediately. Jessica stood up elegantly, but her eyes burned with rage. As she gathered her purse, she said he would regret it, that she could have made him happy, while he had chosen to believe the lies of a housekeeper and a child's tantrums. Robert replied that child was his daughter, and Mary had done what he should have done: protect her. Before leaving, Jessica turned to Mary with a look full of hatred, warning her that people like her should stay in their place. When the door closed, Mary felt an enormous weight lift from her shoulders. But the real test would be facing Victoria and rebuilding the trust that Jessica had destroyed. That night was the longest of Robert's life. When he entered Victoria's room, he found her curled up on the bed, still dressed, with a face swollen from crying. When she saw her father, she hid under the pillow. Robert sat on the edge of the bed, searching for the right words to repair the immense damage he had done. He explained to the child that Jessica would never be there again, that they wouldn't get married, that she would never go anywhere, because this was her home forever. Victoria slowly moved the pillow, looking at her father with eyes full of hope, but also fear, asking if it was really true that he wouldn't send her away. Robert took her in his arms, assuring her she was the most important thing in his life, and that he had been stupid not to realize it before. For the first time in months, Victoria let herself go completely, crying out all the accumulated pain. Mary, from the doorway, watched the scene with tears in her eyes. Seeing that father and daughter find their bond again was the most beautiful reward for everything she had endured. In the following days, Robert dedicated every free moment to Victoria. He canceled important meetings to take her to Central Park, cooked with her burning half the kitchen, took her to movies and amusement parks. But most importantly, he talked with her. Victoria, with the slowness of a wounded child learning to trust again, began telling everything Jessica had done and said to her. Robert listened to every word with a bleeding heart, realizing how much his daughter had suffered in silence. One evening, as he tucked her into bed, Victoria told him that Mary had been the only one who believed her, the only one who protected her. Robert looked at Mary, who was arranging clothes in the closet, and understood he had an immense debt to that courageous woman. When they were alone, he confessed to Mary that he didn't know how to thank her for saving his daughter when he had abandoned her. Mary replied that she had only done what was right, that Victoria was a special child who deserved to be protected. Robert made a decision that had been maturing for days. He offered Mary a different position, no longer housekeeper, but family. He wanted her to be officially Victoria's guardian, with adequate salary, a larger room, and above all his respect and eternal gratitude. He explained that she had shown she loved his daughter more than he himself had during that period, that Victoria trusted her like a second mother. Mary accepted with tears in her eyes, knowing she had found not just a job, but a real family. In the following months, the penthouse transformed. It was no longer the cold house of a rich man, but the warm hearth of a family that had chosen each other. Victoria returned to smiling. Robert learned to be a present father. Mary became the pillar that held the pieces together. One evening, watching a movie together on the couch like a real family, Victoria said she was glad Jessica had left, that now they were a real family, and that Mommy in heaven was happy to see them happy. Robert looked at Mary and saw the same emotion he felt. They had saved Victoria, but most importantly, they had learned what it meant to be a family. People who choose every day to love and protect each other. 2 years had passed since that terrible night when Mary had to show Robert the truth about Jessica. The Harrison penthouse was now a completely different place, full of laughter, the scent of homemade cookies, Victoria's drawings on refrigerators, and that feeling of warmth that only a real family can create. Victoria, now 10 years old, had become a serene and confident child. She had overcome the trauma left by Jessica thanks to the constant love of her father and Mary, and the support of a child psychologist Robert had wanted to consult to make sure his daughter was truly well. Mary had become much more than a guardian. She was Victoria's confidant for school problems, Robert's helper in organizing the house, the person who held that family together with her wisdom and unconditional love. Robert had completely changed his approach to life. He continued being a successful entrepreneur, but had learned to delegate more, to leave the office on time to be present. Every evening he dined with Victoria and Mary. Every weekend was dedicated to family trips. Every important decision was discussed together. One spring evening, as they were dining in the garden illuminated by lights Victoria had chosen, Robert made an announcement that surprised both of them. He had made an important decision. He wanted to officially adopt Mary as a member of the Harrison family. Mary almost choked on her water, not understanding what he meant. Robert explained that he wanted her to be officially Victoria's aunt, with legal documents. In case something happened to him, he wanted her to be Victoria's legal guardian. But most importantly, he wanted the world to know she was part of that family in every respect. Victoria exploded in a cry of joy, saying that this way Mary would really be her aunt, and she could tell everyone she had the best aunt in the world. Mary had tears in her eyes. In all her 54 years, no one had ever given her such a precious gift. Being officially recognized as part of a family she loved more than her own life. Using his first name instead of Sir for the first time, she told Robert she would be honored to be part of the Harrison family, but that they had already been her family for a long time. That evening they organized a spontaneous party in the garden. Robert put on music. Victoria danced like a little princess. Mary prepared her famous apple pie. They were only 3, but they felt like the largest and happiest family in the world. During the party, Victoria, tired from dancing, sat on Mary's lap asking if she remembered when Jessica was mean to her. Mary nodded, stroking her hair and saying she remembered. When Victoria asked if she had saved her, Mary replied that they had saved each other, that she had taught her what true love was. Victoria thought for a moment, then looked at her father, who was watching them with tenderness, asking if he believed Mommy in heaven was happy about how they had become. Robert approached and hugged them both, assuring her that Mommy Sarah was very happy because she knew Victoria had 2 people who loved her more than anything in the world and who would do everything to protect her. Mary looked at that father and daughter who had become her reason for living, thinking how strange destiny was. She had arrived as a simple housekeeper looking for stable work. Instead, she had found a family, a purpose, the purest love she had ever experienced. That night, as she tucked Victoria into bed, the child asked if she would never get married, if she didn't want a family of her own. Mary smiled, tucking in the covers and explaining that she already had the most beautiful family in the world. She and Daddy were everything her heart could desire. When Victoria asked what would happen if Daddy fell in love again, but with a good person, Mary said that if he found a good woman who truly loved her and made all three happy, she would be the first to be glad. But until then, the three of them were doing just fine. When Robert came to say goodnight to his daughter, he found Mary still sitting beside the bed, watching over the child's sleep. They thanked each other for everything they had done for one another, looking together at Victoria sleeping peacefully. They understood they had created something miraculous, a family born not from chance or convenience, but from the conscious choice to take care of each other. Jessica Morgan was just a bad memory from the past. The future belonged to them. Robert, Victoria, and Mary Harrison. A real family that had chosen love as foundation and mutual protection as mission. And in that Manhattan penthouse, every evening still resonated with the lullabies Mary sang to Victoria, the same ones she had sung to her children years before. Because a mother's love, real or adoptive, is the most powerful force in the world. That force had won over all the evil Jessica had tried to bring into that house. Because in the end, the most beautiful families are those born from the heart, not from blood. And Mary Harrison's heart had room for all the love Victoria and Robert needed. Like if you believe in the power of brave people who protect the vulnerable, comment, which moment of the story touched you most? Share to inspire those who know. True love knows no social boundaries. Subscribe for more stories of families born from heart and courage. Sometimes it takes the courage of a simple person to save an entire family. Sometimes appearances deceive, and monsters wear elegant clothes. And sometimes the purest love comes from those with no blood ties, but immense hearts. Because real family is recognized by who is willing to sacrifice everything to protect you.